Alright, on the elevator down, gonna go play a cash game session. Bit of a weird setup that they have going here on Resorts World. But oh yeah, we're playing a cash session at Resorts World. Hopefully, fun one for you guys. Alright, we'll see you on the other side. Peace. I'm not sure what I was expecting, but I honestly really liked the Resorts World Poker Room. Really nice place to play. We decided to jump into a 2-3 game in for $800. That's the max. Bit of a weird limit. They've got some funky stuff going on with this room, including the straddle rules, which we'll go over later. We pretty much pick up garbage in our first hour at the table before we're ready to get involved with our first hand. For our first hand of the night, we're going to start on the button. The under the gun player limps, as does the middle position player. This is usually a sign of a good game, and this game was definitely good. So when we peel Queen Jack offsuit, we're going to look to isolate what we think is a weaker range. We raise it to $20 to go, slightly larger than a standard open. We've added on a bit because people hate to fold in this game, and because there's a couple limpers. Both the blinds are going to call, and that invites the limpers to call as well. So we're going to be playing a $100 pot in our first flop of the night as we go 5 ways to see 9-9 deuce. We completely whiff it, and when it checks over to me, these guys love to call. I'm not a big fan of bluffing so multi-way, so I decide to check it back, and we make top pair on the Queen of Diamonds turn. It pretty quickly checks on over to us again, and while I don't love betting the flop so multi-way, because players are naturally going to be checking to me, when they've chosen to check again after I showed some passivity on the flop, I don't think they can really be all that strong. So I'm going to be stabbing quite wide here. So for that reason, I think we need to mix in some thinner bets as well. I think we're pretty much always ahead here. So I decided to put out a small bet around 1/3 pot of $35. Don't think we can go super big just on the off chance that someone is trapping a 9. Plus it's usually a good idea to size down multi-way. The small blind thinks the $35 is fair. The big blind agrees. And the under the gun player is getting about a jillion to 1 on his money. He sticks in the call as well. The middle position player realizes when there's too many cooks in the kitchen. He lets his cards go. So we're still 4 ways to a river in a pot that is ballooning up to $240 already, and the river is the 4 of diamonds. All 3 of them are going to pretty quickly check it on over to me. There may be some merit in betting small for value, targeting a hand like Queen 10 or a smaller pair like 8s or 7s, but I decide to check it on back this time. So we check back with queens up, and as suspected, we of course have the best hand. Probably missed a little bit of value on the river. If I could go back, I'd probably bet somewhere about $125 or so. But we can't really complain when we drag in the first pot we play of the night. Please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It really helps me out a lot. I have a bunch more videos from my Vegas trip that are coming out soon, so hit the bell for notifications to stay up to date on the latest releases. This next hand is super weird. We have pocket 10s in the big blind. The button straddle is on for $6, but here at Resorts World, the button straddle means the action skips the blinds first and goes straight to under the gun, and it also skips the button unless there's a raise. So when the cutoff limps, the button does not act yet, and it's to the small blind who folds, so when it's our turn, we raise it up to $25 with a pretty good hand. Looking back, could probably even go larger. The cutoff limp calls, and the button straddle gets out of the way. So we're heads up out of position with $55 in the middle, and the flop is ace, ace, 8 with 2 hearts. Now I think if I could go back, I would probably start off with a check here, but as played, I decided to bet out a little bit larger than 1/3 pot, $20 into 55. The cutoff plays with his chips a little bit before flicking in 4 red ones for the call. So we're heads up to a turn, which comes the 4 of diamonds. I think if we are going to bet the flop, we should probably look to double barrel the turn, as the cutoff can have some Broadway cards that have floated the flop. But as played, I check, and the cutoff must have really liked my flop bet because he decides to use the old copy and paste routine. He bets $20. I can't fold for that price. I flick in the call to a river. It is a red 4-sider, but we do not make a full house. It's the 9 of hearts. I don't think leading this river makes a ton of sense, especially when the front door flush comes in. We still have second pair, but I'm not feeling super comfortable, and I'm feeling especially uncomfortable when I check it over. He decides to bet out for $100. It's around 2/3 pot. Could he be bluffing with 2 random Broadway cards containing a high heart? Maybe. But my therapist told me I need to try and work on being more trusting, so I decided to believe the cutoff this time and let it go. This next hand is a little bit nuts, and it's partially my fault. I have 6-7 of spades on the button. There's been 2 limpers, and the hijack has ISO'd up to 15. I have identified the hijack as a player I want to play some pots with, so I want to get in there, but I don't really want to play super multi-way, so I decided to try an ISO with a 3-bet up to $50. A bit too loose? Sure, but I flew over 6 hours to get here, so I'm going to be putting in some 3-bets with suited connectors. The small blind has moved seats to sit on my left, but that's only an advantage when I don't have the button in front of me, so a bit bizarre when she calls. Even more bizarre when the big blind calls as well. The under the gun straddler looks genuinely perplexed by this. Perhaps he was going for the limp re-raise, but now thinks better of it. He puts in the call. The low jack limper puts in the call as well. And the hijack has 2 cards with letters and or numbers on them. He also flicks in the call. So we're going 6 ways with $300 in the middle to a flop. Dealer, I'd like 3 spades and not a word. This dealer was super cool. His name was Q, and he almost comes through for us when the flop is Jack 9 deuce with 2 spades. We do have a flush draw. It slowly checks around to us, and under some slightly different circumstances, I could definitely get on board with betting a flush draw here. But so multi-way, and with jacks and 9s being represented in a lot of their cold calling ranges, I decided to just check it back, and we improve on the turn, not with a spade, but with the 6 of clubs. I'm pretty confident that's never good here, especially not when the small blind leads for $110. It's small bet relative to the size of the pot, so we probably have to continue. The big blind gets out of the way. The under the gun can't seem to make heads or tails of this hand. He's taking quite a while with his turn decision as well. Eventually he sticks in the call, and at this point we for sure have to stick around to see all 5 cards. That is until after the low jack takes some money from his stack to tip out the waitress who brought him his drink. He shifts his stack into the middle for $400. Ayah. Obviously we can't call now. Perhaps if we c-bet small on the flop and check back the turn, we could have seen a river, but nevertheless, we're going to fold. I did stick around to record the end of this hand because the small blind would call, the under the gun would tank fold. What he said was pocket 10s. The small blind has queens, and the low jack has jack 6 of hearts. Of course, the river is the 10 of spades. We would have made our flush and coolered the low jack with a flush over set situation. We get 2 loose pre-flop and punished for it, but we move on. In this next hand, I put my opponent in the blender harder than I ever have before, and I'm excited to talk about it. It starts with King Jack offsuit on the button. The middle position player is going to limp. He is the player in question, and we're going to raise it up to $15. The small blind comes with a cold call, and the limper is going to call as well. So we're 3 ways to a flop in position, and the flop is gin for us. It comes Jack, Jack 8, rainbow. There's 45 in the middle, and when they both check it out over to me, I'm going to size down for a 1/3 size. I'm going to be doing this with my entire betting range in this spot on these paired boards. The small blind sticks in the call, and now the middle position player, who's up quite a big chunk from the last hand, decides to put in the check raise up to $40. Now it's a little bit weird because this $40 check raise isn't really to a real size. I would probably consider putting some more money in if he made it like $60 or $75 to go, but this just doesn't feel like a super strong hand to me when he chooses such a small size. So I put in the call, and this entices the small blind to come along as well. Hoping to see no queens or 7s on the turn, and we see a pretty clean turn of the ace of spades. Brings in a backdoor draw, and I think we're going to find out a lot about our opponent's hand strength on the turn. The small blind checks, and the middle position player is going to continue when he grabs a stack of reds and bets $100 into $165. A little bit under 2/3 pot, and now I'm starting to be convinced the middle position player is going to have a weaker jack than I am. I don't think he would limp ace jack. Jack 8 definitely is still a possibility. I considered raising this turn and making it something like 225 to go, but if I call here in position, I think I could pretty comfortably shove over the top of a river bet from the middle position player and get all the money in. So I didn't feel like I had to raise. If we were something like 1,200, 1,500 effective to start the hand, I may consider raising the turn a little bit more. But as played, I decided to just call. This sheds the small blind, so we're heads up in position to a river with $1 in it for every day of the year, and the river is the blank 4 of diamonds. I'm about 90% sure we have the best hand here, and I become even more sure of it when the middle position player tanks a little bit before checking it on over to us. I have around $565. It's around 150% the size of the pot. I think if you had a hand like pocket 8s, jack 8, or ace jack, those are probably going to bet the river themselves. I went back and forth between a sizing of $250 and all in, but I don't think he has any hands weaker than Jack X that are going to call here. So I decide to go for the home run and get a little bit greedy with the 1.5x pot shove. It's hard to see here, but there is a stack of green in front of my red chips. So this is a shove for $565. And let me tell you, the middle position player hits the tank hard. In real time, he thought about this decision for 5.5 minutes. Once we fade the snap call, we of course know we're good. I'm not sure if I've ever put anyone in the blender this hard. He is tanking for quite a while. He's engaging in some table talk, trying to get a read, but I'm doing my best to tune him out and just stare at the ace of spades. Eventually he flips over a jack. I only know this because some players at the table react a bit. And finally, after nearly 6 minutes of tanking, he folds. Honestly, credit to him, really good fold. I honestly didn't think he was capable of folding a jack in that spot. This might be a case of scared money, where he's up a bit and doesn't want to put his whole stack at risk. Or maybe he just made a great fold. Playing with him for a few hours, I tend to lean towards the former, but nevertheless, very nice hand from him. Perhaps a $250 bet gets snapped off. I think if he's thinking for so long for twice the amount, he's probably paying off the smaller size. But I am still happy that I went for the greedy overbet. If you're familiar with poker math, you'll know that we have to get called considerably less when we choose the large size to make the same amount of money that we do when we choose the smaller size. So a little unfortunate we couldn't get paid there in what would have been a $1,500 pot. But we can't really complain when we're scooping in a pot of nearly $400 and our stack is moving up in the right direction. This next hand is pretty much a dream spot. It starts with ace, king of hearts in the low jack. In my opinion, probably the prettiest suited ace. Let me know what you guys think about that in the comments. But we open it up to $15. The player to our left has been playing a lot of pots with us. She puts in the call from the hijack. The button is also coming along for the call. So it looks like we're going to be taking this hand multi-way. That is until the small blind wakes up and decides that $15 is not enough money when he slides out a raise to $115. A little bit of a string bet, but I don't really care. We start the hand $365 effective, which is also known in this game as a little bit less than 125 big blinds. I'm definitely not folding with ace-king suited here. I don't think a non-all-in raise size makes sense, so I decided to take my stack of green chips and slide it into the middle, signifying that I'm all in. It folds around to the small blind who says this.
Gamble.
Good luck, I gamble. The small blind says he's gambling, which is probably good for us. The dealer takes her time for some suspense before she puts the king of diamonds right in the window. We make top pair, and it gets even better on the king of spades turn card. We should be good. We turn over our hand, and we are good against ace queen offsuit. So it was a bit of a gamble from our opponent. Credit to him for getting in there and mixing it up. We are on the right side of a collision between two big hands. Now, should he really be stacking off with ace queen O for that much pre-flop? I'll let you guys be the judge in the comment section. All I know is I'm not too mad at it at all. With that, our stack climbs up over the $1,000 mark, and we're cruising so far in this late night session at Resorts World. They say all good things must come to an end, but we're looking to keep our good thing going when we peel pocket tens in the cutoff. The $6 button straddle is on, and the low jack player has raised it up to $20. We're going to be 3-betting here with a very good holding. Typically like to go 3x in position against a linear range. I throw on an extra red chip to really de-incentivize the button player from calling behind. It gets the job done as she folds, and when it's back on the low jack, I overbet the pot on the river against him a couple minutes ago, and he doesn't look like he's in the mood to fold again to me anytime soon. He puts the call in, and so we're going to go heads up in a 3-bet pot in position with about $140 in the middle. And it comes jack high, jack 7-5 rainbow. We still have second pair. Now, even though there's an overcard to our tens on the board, when he checks on over to me, I'm going to be going for a small c-bet in position, still ahead of a lot of his hands, including random overcards that we want to deny equity from, and some lower pairs that we want to get value from before any more scare cards come out. So I bet out for $45, and he pretty quickly puts in the call. Off to a turn, which is the ace of hearts. It brings in a backdoor heart draw. A little bit of a nuanced thing here on the turn. We are more likely to be betting with the 10 of hearts, as it makes a slightly worse bluff catcher than 10-10 with no heart when the flush completes on the river. I think our hand has some showdown value, so we decide to check without a heart to turn our hand into a bluff catcher, but I'm not 100% sure how I feel about bluff catching the queen of hearts river. So when the low jack checks it on over to me, I take our showdown value and check it on back, and we see that the river was extra bad for us as the low jack rolls over king queen offsuit. So we're going to drop a chunk here. Unfortunate river for us, but I'm fine with the way we played it. Picking up our next hand, we have pocket nines in the big blind. The under the gun straddle is on for $6. The cutoff is limped, and we've made it 25 to go. The under the gun straddler has called, and the cutoff, who's a very loose action player, definitely someone you want to play some pots with, comes along as well. He says he has a bad hand, so I'm tapping the table to wish him some luck.
and we see a pretty clean flop for pocket nines, 5-4 deuce with 2 diamonds. I'm going to check out a position here multi-way, which I will be doing a lot. I could also get on board with a small bet because we probably have the best hand right now, and our hand may benefit for some protection. But as played, I check, and the straddle is going to assemble a bet of $45. The cutoff picks his cards off the table to show his friend who's sitting behind him. Very fun action player. He definitely did some unorthodox things at the table, but he's pretty much wailing it off, so the table was very cool about it. Let him have fun and have his buddy sweat for most of the night. He puts in the call. When it's back on us, I don't think 45 is enough. We have a strong but vulnerable hand. Any 3, 6, 10, jack, queen, king, or ace is probably a bad card for us, so we want to just try and get some money in now and deny some equity from hands with 2 overcards or with some gut shots. So I decide to raise it up to $150, and our sharply dressed friend in the 4 seat must be a vlog watcher because he says this.
Punish.
That's right, we are punishing. On such a draw-heavy board, I want to punish the cutoff for having too wide of a limp calling pre-flop range, and for the straddle defending too wide. I've also been playing with her for quite a while. She loves to call, which is probably the reason that she's in the tank for so long. She gives me a speech and tells me that she won't be folding to me again. After the hand, she let me know that she had ace-jack offsuit with no diamonds. So pretty interesting that she's thinking so long. Finding this out after the hand, I do like my check raise with nines a little bit more if she's going to be stabbing this wide on the flop, because I know the cutoff is going to be super wide behind as well. Eventually, the straddle gives up her cards, and when it's back on the cutoff, I wasn't really expecting him to fold much of anything at all. He only has $100 left behind after the bet that I put in. The reason why I didn't just choose a larger all-in size is because off camera, the straddle actually had quite a bit of money behind her, and I didn't really want to just run $800 each with a 1-pair hand. So the cutoff comes with call. The pot is over $400. He only has $100 left in his stack. So when the turn is the 8 of spades, it's not one of those bad cards for us that we mentioned. It's probably the best card in the deck outside of a 9. So I decide to put all my money in. The cutoff very quickly calls, and we see the river 5 of spades. It seems like a blank. I turn over my cards, and we see the bad news when the cutoff shows us jack 3 of spades for a rivered flush. He limp called pre, called the check raise on the flop with an open ender, and went runner flush to win this nearly $700 pot. I told you guys he was good for the game, but he gets us this time. The sick thing is, about 30 minutes later, he would get stacked by another player at the table who would leave shortly after. The game is dying down. The action's not quite as good. We're down about $450 from the high point. It's late at night. It's time to rack up and book a win.
All right, just finished up a 2-3 session. Was in for 800, out for $1,000. Was up maybe 400 at the high point. Had a couple very weird pots. If I c-bet with the 6-7 of spades and just check the turn, probably make $1 million. That was a really weird cooler hand, but probably should just be walking free, honestly. Crazy game, played for way too long, but this guy was dumping chips, to be fair, so I really couldn't leave. Yeah, it is late. It's like 3 a.m., which is like 6 a.m. for me, so I'm gonna sleep like a dog. And yeah, that's Vegas, I guess, huh? First cash game session in Vegas, winner. Can't complain about that. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.